Hello and welcome back to the Nations Prism, your lens into the fascinating tapestry of global cultures. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into something that might completely shatter your understanding of what it means to work hard and succeed in life. Picture this. You think working hard always leads to success, right? In America, people might take weeks off for vacation to recharge and come back more productive than ever. But in Japan, taking time off can be seen as irresponsible, lacking commitment to your team. And in some tragic cases, the pressure to never stop working has literally led to death from exhaustion, a phenomenon they call karoshi. Yes, you heard that right. People dying from overwork. This isn't just about different vacation policies or office hours. What we're looking at today is a fundamental clash between two completely different philosophies of life: success and what it means to be a valuable member of society. The American dream tells us to chase individual achievement, to climb that ladder, to maximize our personal potential. Meanwhile, Japanese culture whispers that true honor comes from sacrifice for the collective good, from putting the team, the company, the group before yourself, even if it costs you everything. But here's what's truly shocking. Both of these approaches have created some of the world's most successful economies. The United States dominates global innovation, from Silicon Valley startups to Wall Street financial markets. Japan, despite being a relatively small island nation, became the world's second-largest economy for decades and continues to be a powerhouse in manufacturing, technology, and precision engineering. So how can two such radically different approaches to work both lead to massive success? The answer lies buried in history, woven into the fabric of how these societies developed, how they survived their greatest challenges, how they defined what it means to be a contributing member of society. When American workers fought for the 8-hour workday in the early 1900s, they were establishing a principle that your life belongs to you first, and your employer gets a fair portion of it. When Japanese salarymen emerged from the ashes of World War II, they rebuilt their nation by treating their companies like families, where loyalty and sacrifice weren't just expected, they were sacred duties. This creates a paradox that most people never realize exists. We tend to think about work culture in terms of better or worse, more efficient or less efficient. But what if I told you that the Japanese concept of working yourself to death and the American concept of work-life balance both stemmed from the same basic human need, the desire to create meaning and purpose in our lives? The paths couldn't be more different, but the destination is surprisingly similar. Today we're going to explore 7 specific areas where American and Japanese work cultures don't just differ. They exist in completely parallel universes. Some of these differences will shock you because they challenge basic assumptions you probably didn't even know you had. Others will make you question whether your own approach to work and career is really serving you, or whether you've been following cultural programming without even realizing it. We'll discover why a Japanese employee might feel genuinely guilty about leaving work at 5 p.m., even when there's nothing urgent to do, while their American counterpart sees staying late unnecessarily as a sign of poor time management. We'll explore why job hopping is seen as ambitious and smart in America, but can be viewed as a form of betrayal in Japan. And we'll uncover how two societies can look at the exact same workplace behavior and see completely opposite things: competence versus incompetence, loyalty versus selfishness, wisdom versus foolishness. By the end of today's exploration, you'll never look at your own workplace the same way again. So buckle up, because we're about to take a journey that will challenge everything you think you know about work, success, and what it really means to build a meaningful career in the modern world. Let's start with something that seems simple, but reveals the depth of these cultural differences: work hours and overtime. On the surface, you might think this is just about how many hours people spend in the office. But dig deeper, and you'll discover we're actually looking at two completely different philosophies about the relationship between time, value, and human worth. In America, the typical workday ends somewhere between 5 and 6 p.m. There's an underlying assumption that efficiency matters more than face time. If you can accomplish your tasks in fewer hours, that's actually seen as a good thing. American workers often pride themselves on working smarter, not harder. The idea is that your value to the company should be measured by what you produce, not by how many hours you warm a chair. But step into a Japanese office, and you'll encounter something that might seem almost alien. It's not uncommon for employees to stay until 9, 10, or even 11 p.m., not because they have massive amounts of work to do, but because leaving before your colleagues, especially before your boss, can be interpreted as a lack of commitment. Some employees even sleep at their desks rather than go home, using the office couch or literally putting their head down on their workspace. Here's where it gets truly shocking. Much of this overtime isn't even paid. In Japan, there's a concept called service overtime, where working extra hours is seen as a demonstration of loyalty to the company family. It's not about the money. It's about showing that you care more about the collective success than your personal convenience. From an American perspective, this might seem like exploitation. But from a Japanese perspective, it's about honor and dedication. This difference emerges from completely different historical experiences. After World War II, Japan rebuilt itself through what they called the salaryman culture, essentially. Middle-class office workers who dedicated their entire lives to their companies in exchange for lifetime employment and security. These men, and they were almost exclusively men, saw their companies as extensions of their families. Working late wasn't sacrifice, it was duty. Meanwhile, American work culture was shaped by labor movements of the early 20th century that fought bitter battles to establish the 8-hour workday and the concept that workers had rights separate from their employers' interests. The idea that your time belongs to you first became deeply embedded in American thinking about work. The real tragedy emerges when we look at the health consequences. Japan had to create a word karoshi for death from overwork because it became so common. We're talking about people who literally worked themselves to death. Heart attacks, strokes, and suicides from exhaustion. One documented case involved a young employee who worked over 100 hours of overtime in a single month before dying of a heart attack. He was 24 years old. This extends into how vacation time is viewed and used. American workers typically receive between 10 and 20 vacation days per year, and there's generally an expectation that you'll use them. Taking vacation is seen as your right, and many companies actually encourage it because they've learned that burned-out employees make more mistakes and are less innovative. In Japan, employees might technically have vacation days available, but using them can be complicated. There's often an unspoken pressure not to inconvenience your colleagues by taking time off. Studies showed that Japanese workers use only about 50% of their allocated vacation days, and when they do take time off, it's often just a day or two. Not the week or 2-week stretches common in America. The decision-making process reflects these same underlying values. American workplaces tend to favor rapid decision-making, often by individuals or small groups who have the authority to act quickly. There's an assumption that being decisive is good, that moving fast gives you competitive advantage, that individual accountability for decisions is both fair and efficient. Japanese decision-making operates on an entirely different principle called ringi, a consensus-building process where decisions move up and down. The hierarchy until everyone has had input and agreement is reached. This can take weeks or months for decisions that an American company might make in a single meeting. But the result is that when implementation happens, everyone is genuinely committed because they've been part of the process. This brings us to one of the most dramatic cultural divides: company loyalty and career progression. American workers change jobs an average of 12 times during their careers. Job hopping is not only accepted, it's often encouraged as a way to advance your career, increase your salary, and gain diverse experience. The assumption is that you owe your employer good work while you're there, but you don't owe them your life. Japanese workers, particularly in traditional companies, often stay with the same employer for their entire career. This isn't just about job security, though the promise of lifetime employment is part of it. It's about a fundamentally different understanding of what work means in your life. Your company becomes your identity. Your colleagues become your extended family. Leaving feels like abandoning people who depend on you. The shocking reality is that in Japan, changing jobs can actually hurt your career prospects. Employers might wonder why you weren't loyal to your previous company. What's wrong with you that you couldn't make it work? Meanwhile, in America, staying at the same company for 20 years might make employers wonder if you lack ambition or adaptability. Consider this contrast. A Sony engineer who worked for the same company for 40 years, rising slowly through the ranks, becoming deeply expert in his specific area. forming lifelong friendships with colleagues, and ultimately retiring with a sense that he had contributed to something larger than himself. Compare this to a Silicon Valley programmer who might work at Apple for 2 years, then Meta for 18 months, then start her own company. Constantly learning new technologies, maximizing her earning potential, and building a network across the industry. This extends into how meetings are conducted and decisions are made. American meetings are often forums for debate, brainstorming, and decision-making. People are expected to speak up, share ideas, challenge assumptions, and advocate for their positions. Silence in an American meeting might be interpreted as disengagement or lack of preparation. Direct confrontation or disagreement is often seen as healthy, the idea that the best ideas emerge from conflict. Japanese meetings operate on entirely different principles. Much of the real work happens before the formal meeting. In a process called nemawashi, literally meaning root binding, like preparing soil before planting, people have informal conversations, build consensus gradually, and by the time the formal meeting happens, the outcome is often already determined. The meeting itself is more about confirming agreement than creating it. This means that silence in a Japanese meeting isn't empty. It's full of meaning, respect, and careful consideration. Direct confrontation or public disagreement might be seen as disrespectful, not because people don't have strong opinions, but because there are more harmonious ways to express them rooted in the concept of harmony. The way performance is evaluated reveals another fundamental divide. In American workplaces, performance reviews typically focus on individual achievements, innovation, and measurable results. The expectation is that if you consistently perform well, you should be promoted relatively quickly. A talented employee might become a manager within 2 or 3 years. Could potentially reach senior leadership positions while still in their 30s. Japanese promotion systems operate on completely different principles. Advancement is often based on seniority, with employees moving up predictable career ladders over decades. A brilliant young employee might have to wait 10 or 15 years for a promotion that an equally talented American might receive in 2 years. This seniority-based system, called Nenko, creates workplace stability and long-term thinking, ensuring that leaders have deep experience and understand the company culture thoroughly. The shocking thing is that both systems produce successful leaders, but they're almost completely different types of leaders. American CEOs are often dynamic, charismatic individuals who rose quickly through innovative thinking and bold decision-making. Japanese CEOs are often experienced, thoughtful individuals who understand their organizations intimately and can navigate complex relationships built over decades. These fundamental differences in career development reflect an even more sobering contrast in how these cultures approach work-life balance and personal health. Here we encounter what might be the most shocking difference of all: the relationship between work and human survival itself. American companies are increasingly embracing the concept of work-life balance, mental health days, and employee wellness programs. There's a growing recognition that burned-out employees are less productive, less creative, and more likely to make costly mistakes. Companies like Microsoft have experimented with 4-day work weeks, finding that productivity actually increased when employees had more time to rest and recharge. The underlying philosophy is that human beings aren't machines. We need recovery time to function at our best. But in Japan, we encounter the tragic phenomenon of karoshi death from overwork. This isn't just an occasional tragedy. It's so common that the government tracks it as a public health issue. We're talking about thousands of people annually who die from heart attacks, strokes, and stress-induced illnesses directly caused by excessive work hours and workplace pressure. Even more shocking, there's a related term, kurojisatsu, suicide from work-related stress. The Japanese government has actually tried to intervene, implementing laws that limit overtime, hours, and requiring companies to monitor employee work-life balance. But the cultural pressure often overrides the legal protections. Employees find ways to work around the rules, staying late without officially logging overtime, taking work home, or coming in on weekends voluntarily, because the social expectation to demonstrate commitment is stronger than the legal requirement to rest. This creates a paradox that highlights how deeply culture shapes behavior. The Japanese concept of gaiman, enduring the seemingly unbearable with patience and dignity, means that struggling with work stress isn't just normalized, it's actually seen as virtuous. Meanwhile, American workplaces are moving toward recognizing that mental health is just as important as physical health. Offering employee assistance programs and stress management resources, these different approaches to human sustainability in the workplace reflect broader cultural philosophies about innovation and progress. American culture encourages disruption, individual risk-taking, and challenging existing systems. Silicon Valley has become synonymous with breakthrough innovation precisely because this culture rewards thinking outside the box and being willing to overturn established ways of doing things. But Japan has developed its own approach to innovation that's equally powerful, though less visible to outside observers. Japanese companies excel at what's called Kaizen, continuous improvement. Instead of dramatic breakthroughs, they focus on incremental refinements that accumulate into massive advantages over time. Toyota's manufacturing processes, Sony's precision engineering, Nintendo's game design philosophy, these represent innovation through patience, persistence, and collective refinement rather than individual genius and disruption. The truly remarkable realization is that both approaches have created some of the world's most successful companies and technologies. Apple's revolutionary products and Toyota's reliable vehicles both dominate global markets. But they emerged from completely different cultural philosophies about how progress happens. This extends into how these cultures define success itself. American culture tends to measure success through individual achievement. Your salary, your title, your personal accomplishments. The question, "What do you do?" really means what's your job? And the answer helps people place you in a social hierarchy based on professional achievement. Personal advancement, even at the expense of colleagues, is often seen as natural and healthy competition. Japanese culture tends to measure success through group achievement and social harmony. The question isn't just what you do, but how well you do it within the context of your relationships and responsibilities to others. Personal success that comes at the expense of group success might actually be seen as failure. An American worker might change jobs to increase their salary by 20%, seeing this as obvious career advancement. A Japanese worker might turn down a higher-paying job offer because it would mean abandoning colleagues who depend on them. These aren't just different strategies for achieving the same goals, they're different definitions of what the goals should be in the first place. They represent fundamentally different answers to the question of what makes a life well lived, and what role work should play in human flourishing. What we've discovered today isn't just a comparison between two different ways of organizing work. We've uncovered two completely different philosophies about what it means to be human in a modern society. The American approach, with its emphasis on individual achievement, work-life balance, and rapid career advancement, reflects a cultural belief that each person has the right and responsibility to maximize their own potential. The Japanese approach, with its focus on group harmony, long-term commitment, and collective success, reflects a cultural belief that individual fulfillment comes through contributing to something larger than yourself. Neither approach is inherently better or worse. They're solving different problems and optimizing for different values. American-style individualism has created unprecedented innovation, economic mobility, and personal freedom. Japanese-style collectivism has created remarkable social stability, institutional knowledge, and collective achievement. The tragedy of karoshi is real and heartbreaking. But so is the American epidemic of workplace loneliness and the anxiety that comes from constantly having to prove your individual worth. What's truly fascinating is that both cultures are now grappling with the limitations of their traditional approaches. Japan is slowly recognizing that their work culture needs to become more sustainable, and that innovation requires some degree of individual risk-taking and creative disruption. America is discovering that pure individualism can create workplaces that feel disconnected and meaningless, and that some problems require the kind of long-term collective thinking that American culture sometimes struggles to maintain. The most successful companies and individuals in our globalized world are often those who can draw insights from both approaches. They understand when to prioritize individual achievement and when to prioritize group harmony. They know how to make quick decisions when speed matters, and how to build consensus when buy-in is essential. They can appreciate both the American drive for innovation and the Japanese commitment to excellence through continuous improvement. But perhaps the most important lesson isn't about work culture at all. It's about the power of cultural perspective to shape reality itself. When we understand that our own assumptions about work, success, and human nature aren't universal truths, but cultural constructs, we become capable of seeing possibilities that were invisible before. We can ask better questions. What if success isn't just about individual achievement? What if innovation doesn't require disruption? What if the best solutions come from combining seemingly opposite approaches? This understanding becomes even more crucial as our world becomes increasingly interconnected. The challenges we face, climate change, technological disruption, social inequality, are too complex for any single cultural approach to solve alone. We need the American capacity for rapid innovation and the Japanese commitment to long-term thinking. We need individual creativity and collective wisdom. We need the courage to take risks and the patience to build consensus. The 7 differences we've explored today are really windows into different ways of being human in a working world. They remind us that there's no single path to success, fulfillment, or meaningful contribution. They challenge us to question our own assumptions and to remain curious about different ways of organizing human cooperation and achievement. In our increasingly connected world, the most valuable skill might not be technical expertise or even emotional intelligence, but cultural intelligence, the ability to understand, appreciate, and work effectively across different cultural frameworks. Whether you're an American learning to value patience and group harmony, or a Japanese professional learning to embrace individual risk-taking and direct communication, the future belongs to those who can navigate multiple cultural realities. The question isn't whether American or Japanese work culture is better. It's how we can learn from both to create workplaces and careers that honor both individual potential and collective good, that balance innovation with stability, that pursue success without sacrificing human well-being. As our world continues to evolve, these cultural differences won't disappear, but they might become sources of strength rather than division. That's all for today on the Nations Prism. What surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another cultural deep dive. Share this video with a friend who needs to see this. Until next time, keep exploring.